Hello, my name is Justine Kincaid. Welcome to How People Learn, an online workshop for teachers. In this segment of How People Learn, we will discuss how to teach your students to learn effectively. By the end of this workshop segment, teachers will be able to summarize the current impediments to effective learning, explain effective study habit skills for students, and design and develop a class for effective study skills. Learning is misunderstood. Most of the methods we have been taught our whole life to study is ineffective. The good news is there is cognitive research out there that provides us with more effective ways to learn. We will equip our students with all the tools to fill their toolbox in order to be the most effective learners they can be. Cognitive research shows massed practice or cram studying is ineffective. So what now? What do we tell the students? And more importantly, how do we get them to accept it? First, we will talk about current impediments to effective learning. Illusions of knowing is a false sense of mastery and can lead to people making poor decisions without even knowing it. The illusion of knowing is where you think that you know, but you really don't. A common mistake in the learning environment is that students will make is that they will practice something until they feel as if they have mastered the skill, and then they would drop this from their study material. They fall into the familiarity trap. They're familiar with the subject, so they feel as if the task has been mastered, so they stop paying attention to it. This is the illusion of knowing. By the time they are tested on it, they realize they were not as familiar with the subject as they originally thought. The next impediment to learning is massed practice. Massed practice has a reputation as being the most effective study method due to the immediate results that can be seen during testing. Research studies indicate that that's not the case. Success from mass practice is temporary at best. In 1978, a research study was done that showed mass practice students get higher test scores immediately. However, those same students forget more than 50% of the information a few days later. Another common impediment to learning is believing learning that is easy is effective. Research indicates that when we experience difficulties that are desirable, it is learned more effectively. Think about life lessons that you've learned along the way. Did you learn them because someone told you and it was easy? Or did you learn because you had to face adversity and learn from trial by fire? The positives of learning in difficulty are many to mention, but one must keep in mind that there are desirable difficulties and undesirable difficulties. If the learner lacks the foundational knowledge required to use those difficulties to encode and retrieve the knowledge, those difficulties do no good. Now that we understand some of the impediments to learning, let's discuss some tips that we can give our students to make them more effective learners. To make our students more effective learners, we need to teach them some skills. Let us talk about some suggestions for implementation. When I was younger, I wish someone would have sat me down and taught me how to learn effectively. Had I had known how to be an effective learner, I wonder how far I could have gone. Today, we will talk about how you can be that person. The power that you have as a teacher to sit a student down and not just teach them, but teach them how to learn. Suggestion number 1 is to quiz. This could be self-inflicted by the student or teacher-guided or developed. One of the most important study skills is the act of recall or retrieval. The student can do this by practicing retrieving new information from their memory. Implementing self-quizzing enables your brain to retrieve previously stored information. Doing this strengthens the connections in the brain and increases your ability to recall the information later. A simple way to do this as a student is to ask yourself questions while studying or develop flashcards to use for self-quizzing. Take a break. Spaced retrieval practice is important. Let your brain rest. Study the information more than once, but give your brain a break so it can absorb the information. An example of spaced retrieval practice would be developing flashcards. Study those flashcards by shuffling and practicing until the feeling of mastery. Set them to the side to study later. Do this and watch your subject mastery increase. Why is this method more effective than mass practice? Research indicates in order to burn new information into long-term memory, the brain must be given the ability to tie this information into past knowledge. The act of the brain categorizing and making these connections may take a few days. So give it time to accept the new information and then study it again. Suggestion number 3, my final suggestion, is to interleave topics. This means studying different topics at the same time. When you use massed practice, you're more susceptible to the illusion of knowing pitfall we mentioned earlier. Interleaving your study topics trains your brain to be able to differentiate between the different types. An important caveat here is that if the topic is new to the student, there is some blocked practice that is necessary. Blocked practice allows the student to familiarize themselves with the topic. After the student is familiar with the concept, that is when interleaved practice should begin. We talked about some current impediments to learning and some suggestions for effective learning. Now what? You now have the insight to be able to change the student's mindset about how to learn. Teach them that massed practice is a study method that provides temporary results at best. Tell them about the more effective methods of learning, such as spaced practice, interleaving information, and quizzing. When you integrate these methods into the classroom, be transparent with your students as to the why and the how to learn. Teach a student a topic they learn once. Teach a student how to be an effective learner. You will enable them to become educated for a lifetime. The reference I use is Make It Stick: The Science of Successful Learning by Peter Brown, Henry Roediger, and Mark McDaniel. If you have not read this book yet, do it. It is a wonderful book that talks about the science of learning. It discusses how most practiced and taught style of learning is not effective, and it discusses study skills that have been proven by research to increase retention skills and mastery. That's it for now. Until the next segment, ta-ta!